Sid Patel here. We are live from USA Wine Ratings. We're in the 5th year of USA Wine Ratings. I have Rachel Kaiser here. She's, a sommelier and also wine buyer at a restaurant group out in San Francisco. She takes care of buying for 3 restaurants, and we're really going to deep dive in the role of a wine buyer here. Rachel, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So why don't you give our audience a little bit about, your backstory and how you started in this and what you're up to these days?
Yeah. I've been in the restaurant industry my whole adult life, so on the floor for 20 years until recently. But I kind of worked my way up in the restaurants, learning about wine with sales, got my level 1 sommelier certification with one of my restaurants, and then my current one actually paid me to get my second one.
Nice.
So I've been certified for about 6 years now.
Great.
And then I apprenticed under the wine buyer before me, and then ended up taking over the role for the company about 3 years ago.
Got it. And what are the KPIs for your wine buyer role, right? Like if I had to measure you in a performance of your
Sure.
role, what would that be?
So it's a lot of different steps, again, coming from sort of just my own knowledge, but mostly I'm taking meetings with vendors and reps and tasting on a weekly basis. We try to rotate. I have a pretty large by the glass, so we have 25 by the glass, so I try to rotate them pretty often.
Got it.
We used to have 40, and we kind of scaled back after COVID to 25, which is still obviously a lot, but I just try to rotate a little bit more often than we did before. And we really try to touch bases of all the major wine regions in the world. So it's not just a California, it's not just a Bay Area list, it's global.
Super, love it. So I think, mastering wine of the glass program is something which, would be interesting for a lot of young sommeliers out there. How do you, let's say you have nothing, by wine the glass, and you have to consult this restaurant. What are the right questions you would ask? Where would you start? And then how would you come up with your, what is a good suggestion in starting a wine by glass list?
The first thing I would do would be to delve into the food menu and talk to the chef and really see where the chef is coming from as far as regional cuisine goes. Our menu happens to have a lot of old world meets new world foods, so that's really where the wine program goes. I like to have a lot of old world European wines represented, because that's obviously where it all started. But again, being in California, you have to represent Napa and Sonoma, and San Jose, we represent Santa Cruz, and so you kind of have to do a little bit of both. So I would just suggest starting with the food, the menu, sort of the goal of the place, what we're really trying to present to the guest, and go from there. Some people do all New World, which I totally understand if that's your cuisine, or if you're Italian, you're going to have a heavy Italian list. If you're French, the same. So it really just kind of depends on, I think, the cuisine and the vibe of the restaurant, how much, what's your price point maximum and minimum, do you want to have specials? Do you want to have happy hour? Do you want to focus on bottle program also? So it really kind of just depends on.
And there must be some minimums as well, right? Which you really need to have, like
Absolutely.
A Chardonnay or a Pinot Noir.
Exactly.
What are those, which you must have, sort of?
I mean, definitely Chardonnay and Pinot. I would say from California. If I had the room, I would have a French one of both of those as well. But your major varietals, definitely Cabernet, Pinot. I usually have a Malbec in there as well.
So a tip would be literally by searching what are the top selling 5 varietals and include them?
Basically, yeah. But try, you start with the varietals you want, and then you find producers that maybe have a smaller production, or I try not to use labels that you would find at the grocery store, right? Because we're a sit-down restaurant. So restaurant only is a good thing to look for, or a second label from maybe like a higher end label, things like that. Value driven, of course. But yeah, you kind of want to start with your basics and then go from there.
Got it. For all the reps out there, we're all trying to get meetings with buyers, right? I think a lot of time goes, especially with the on-premise, like bartenders and sommeliers and wine directors, because the roster is all here and there, people keep changing. What is a good approach to, let's say, ask you for a meeting, to show a new product?
The best thing to do, especially since I'm appointment only these days, is to just stop in and drop a business card, or I have my business cards at the restaurant that people can give out. I personally hate paper copies of everything, so I love the virtual books. If you can just send me along your book, and I would say polite but persistent. If If I say no a lot of times and you're still bugging me, then I might continue to say no. But it also helps if, maybe you met someone that knows me, or there's some sort of connection with another place, or we've used you in the past and we want to reconnect. And, there's a lot of just sort of references and connections that
And you give that
help.
as a priority for a new meeting, right?
Yeah, I would. If it's someone that I have met before or knows someone that I've worked with before, then I probably would give them a meeting.
Got it. And what about some other things? Like, let's say if I came to your restaurant and say, Rachel, I think if I can analyze your menu for free, I can give you some data backed by market where things are, and maybe I can promise you that this category I can lift by 10% if if I can give you a consulting way, an approach. Does that work? Like with little corporate chains, I've seen it working more on presenting solutions.
We haven't really branched out in that regard before. We are a small company, so we don't pay like a lot of different consultants. I would say it's more of a team effort on collaboration with, like, again, if with the chef or the lead bartender, even with my staff trainings, like, do you guys like this wine, So it's a little bit more of an in-house approach.
Understood. Where I was going is what can I say as a rep or a new producer that can open your mind, like, oh wow, okay, yes, it.
Oh, I
me
see
what
what
it
you
is,
mean. Like, what's the in?
Yeah. What's the in?
Yeah, what's exactly. The in? It really. It's hard to say. It really just depends on, sometimes it's the timing is right. Sometimes, if I'm having a big like seasonal change for the summer and I have to change like 10 wines instead of 2 wines, so it really is a timing thing. But as far as getting in the door, it's really just polite, persistent. Here's what I can offer you. Maybe you throw a few really good value wines on the email as well as attach the book.
As a good start, like a
exactly.
value. Yeah.
So like, hey, I looked at your list and I think these wines might work for you.
In your list, or in most of the restaurants, does someone have to come out for a new person to come in? Let's say some non-performer has to be there in the menu, and that is my opportunity. Let's say a Pinot Noir, you have 4, and one is just not selling.
Yeah.
Or you are open to adding new stuff as well?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I mean, again, I'm all about the rotation on the by the glass. So I try to rotate everything 2 to 3 months. Like, I don't want it on the menu for more than like 3 months.
Why is that?
Just to keep it fresh. And we have a flight program, so all the by the glass is also grouped into flights. So it's really a chance for the guests to try something new every time they come in.
Okay. Got it. Back on the wine buying, right? Like, you have this supplier with you. What do you think is a good elevator pitch for them? What they should include in their first like 30 seconds instead of, oh, my grandfather started this and that, which sure. Tell me how you can help me sell this wine.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, the story always sells, right? That's my favorite thing about wine, is that the family has a background and there's a story. So if there's something like a 4th generation winemaker, or, my family bought this land 100 years ago, stuff like that always is sort of a sentimental aspect, but that I feel really works for me, and it also works for me when I'm selling to other people. The guests, yeah. Exactly. So,
what other things do you think they need to be prepared and be ready? Like, I've seen people sometimes, they'll talk about 4 wines and only have samples of 3, right? Some stupid things like price list is not line priced or whatever it is.
Yeah, being prepared. I mean, I really like it when a rep comes in with the sheet of everything that we're going to be tasting, with all the notes for, case 1 versus case 3, the price breakdown, if there's going to be a vintage change, like all that technical information. If someone can just kind of hand it to me and I can just take notes on that, that's really helpful for me. So just being prepared, I guess, doing their homework and having a clear list of what's going to go on.
Got it. And after your first meeting's done, how do you start normally? You tell them that, hey, let me try 6 bottles, or or if you're falling in love, just completely try them with 3 cases or 5 cases.
So if we decide to put something by the glass, it will most likely go on at all 3 of our locations. So we have Oakland, San Francisco, and San Jose. In that case, that'd be a 9-case drop right away.
Understood.
And so that's 3 at each location. Sometimes they'll do 2 or 4, but let's say it normally is 3. But that would be a by the glass placement at all 3 of our stores.
And how fast are you expecting that depletion rate? That in 2 weeks those 9 cases should be gone?
No, I would say it depends on. Even though we're Bay Area, each market's a little different. San Francisco is like wine bar roots. Oakland is a little bit more of a cocktail-driven program. Ours is sort of 50-50 in San Jose. So each place is a little different. I would say San Francisco, 2 or 3 weeks for those 3 cases, depending on the wine. I think Chardonnay and Pinot, they fly through that in a couple of weeks. Where, Oakland and San Jose, it might be more like a month. But it really just kind of depends on the wine, the price point, and which location.
And how do you judge that this wine is doing good? You know, is it normally the second glass purchase is usually the best indicator of the same wine?
Yes, yeah, that's a good one. You know, obviously the staff being enthused about a wine always helps. So if I can get them to like it, then I know they're going to recommend it and hand sell it. But yeah, I mean, we kind of just at the end of each month we get our, you know, our reports back on what's doing well and what's not. It's kind of a hard thing to judge sometimes, as you know, like maybe the old world wines that people don't, like I have a Kerner by the glass right now, maybe people don't know what it is. So it might not sell as much, but it rounds out the list in a fun, unique way.
It's got its own role there.
Exactly.
Not always the sales, but just for the reputation.
Exactly. Like for instance, District is a small plates restaurant, but we have a really big house-made charcuterie program. It's not a huge sell, but it's something that adds to our program. So that's kind of how I look at some of those wines too.
What about the support, Rachel? Like, are there any things that you ask your suppliers that, hey, you know, if you want to really support me, do these 3 things, you know, it's going to help me?
I mean, with my suppliers, it's developing that relationship. So, for instance, I have a few reps I've worked with for years where I can just email them and be like, I need something right now because they're out of stock, and I trust you to make a choice for me in this moment. Most of the time I taste things, of course, but I think the relationship building and just the trust that we build is very helpful for me to make my job easier.
And what about like winemaker dinners, or how can they help you bring footfalls, and how can they help you sell?
Another thing that I love is when they bring in samples and help with staff training, because they know a lot more of the technical details about the winery or the family. So that helps, having like a special guest at class. You know, it's not just mom teaching every time. You know, so that's helpful too. But yeah, any type of like, you know, samples that they can bring. Winemaker dinners are something we've tried in the past. With COVID, we kind of had to stop. So it's something I have been thinking about doing again, or even like just having a flight with the Somm that night kind of thing. But that would be helpful if a rep came in and brought the bottles and helped me with it, right? So. And
the last one is on the merchandising, right? You have everything, but in-house, you really want to get that culture of buy the glass movement going, right? So obviously the obvious thing that comes to my mind is table tent. But any other things that you've done which have worked for you? Any strategies? Any, you know, back on the staff training also, which you wanted to jump on, is what kind of words you can advise them to start the guest with?
So I think it's again, it's a new world with COVID, but our menu, the way it's designed, is very helpful. So I always just kind of go to the menu because, again, our wines are grouped into flights. So I think with the service aspect of just explaining what's going on, like we have whiskey flights, we have wine flights, we have small plates. The idea is we want to taste as many things as possible. And if people, when they're sitting down, sort of get that in their mindset, like this isn't going to be 5 courses with each course having its own wine. This is, we're sharing, we're sampling, we're tasting, we're trying. So obviously wine fits into that type of a program really well. So people just have to sometimes just be pointed out to it, the fact that it exists. We don't really do the table tent thing because we try to be a little bit.
More of a fine dining.
It's sort of like a casual fine dining, I would say. But yeah, we definitely have that fine dining like service aspect.
So the sales staff is your main
you
know, way to sort of make sure the wine beverage sales are fair enough.
Just having them with the confidence and the tools. Yeah.
Got it. Any other tips that you may have for people out there for the wine glass programs on developing, selling, marketing?
Just keeping an open mind. I know that, you know, I particularly have an old world palate, but a lot of my clientele has more of a new world palate. So just kind of trying to cover all those bases and put yourself in the guest's shoes, I would say. You know, I think you can push a little higher price points on some of those like Napa, Sonoma wines. So why not bring them in if you're gonna, you know, be able to sell them for maybe a little bit more, where maybe some of the more obscure European varietals, you can get a better value and go a little bit like lower on the price, which helps sell those as well. So it is a little bit of like pricing strategy, but mostly just putting yourself in the guest's perspective and like also, again, with the pairing of the food, like if I'm eating this, what do I want to drink with it?
Got it. So a lot of coordination with the chefs as well, right?
Exactly.